What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you 5 game mechanics that I particularly enjoy. As somebody who reviews a lot of games, especially after 100%, people often ask me about things that are unique or that I found especially appealing. So today I thought I would make a list just like that. With that in mind, I think a few of these might surprise people. I don't talk about them too terribly much, though at least one of them I think is pretty universal. So naturally, we will start with that one, and that is the Nemesis System from Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. And while those two particular titles I think are decent enough games by themselves, what really sets them apart is their Nemesis System that we haven't really seen since, due to some legal efforts on Warner Brothers' part, where they saw the system actually patented, which has made people afraid to touch it, frankly, as you might imagine. But the system itself is capable of generating antagonists based on your interactions with them. In this particular case, this is orcs, and when one kills you or burns you or you do these things back to them, it has a chance of turning that orc into a leader of sorts, which then gains attributes and specific interactions with you based on that previous history, which means most of the major foes that you fight throughout those games are in fact sort of dynamically generated based on your own gameplay, which is an incredible system that I think would be pretty great to add to a lot of other games, but unfortunately due to the legal stuff around it, we're unlikely to see that anytime soon, at least not in its full form that we saw here. But that brings us to our next entry, and this is something in a slightly different direction, but it is a spellcrafting system from Tyranny, one of Obsidian's CRPGs. One of my favorite CRPGs, truth be told, but my favorite thing about that game is actually the spellcrafting system, because while that's certainly not a unique notion, I think the way it is handled in Tyranny is incredibly well done. First, all of your characters and companions have a lore skill associated with them, and the higher that lore skill, the more you can modify your own magic. In order to modify your magic, you have to find various sigils, which come in core, major, or accent. Core determines the base type of the spell, usually like an element or an emotion, and then the next part defines what kind of spell it is. Is it a touch spell, a ranged projectile, a defensive spell, that kind of thing, and then the accents can change this even further, down to augmenting the range, the power, the damage type, and it provides you so many options while at the same time keeping it all relatively trimmed in, which altogether leads to a system where you can customize exactly what kind of spells and magic each individual character has based on both what you want and their own abilities. So you're always kind of maxing out exactly what they're capable of, while at the same time tailoring the specifics to that character. Say, are they buffing a weapon, giving themselves a chance to dodge in melee via evasion, or any myriad of things, but easily one of my favorite spellcrafting systems in all of gaming, which naturally puts it on a list like this. And then third on the list, we actually have the Cyberware system from Cyberpunk 2077. And while there's many things you could say about Cyberpunk 2077 in many different directions, one thing that I really enjoyed pretty much across the board that it did was the Cyberware systems, because it touches a lot of other aspects of the game in a really fun way. But at the core of it, you replace your various body parts with technology that then lends itself to all sorts of situations. This is how a lot of the hacking is done in game, and if you want to do that well, you need a better operating system implant, or if you prefer a more physical route, there's all sorts of augments relating to helping you jump higher, turning your arms into mantis blades, turning your hands into steel more or less, and that's before you get into all the different ocular implants, the smart link systems for smart weapons, and while honestly I do wish it had been expanded even farther, all of the different upgrades and how you could use them was pretty much my favorite part of that game, and I think moment to moment I had no greater joy than just running around tearing people to shreds with the mantis blades. And my one hope for the upcoming DLC, honestly, honestly is that they just add and expand more onto that particular system because I had a blast with it. But that brings us to our fourth entry on the list, and this one may or may not surprise people, but it is actually the passing Judgement system in Dragon Age Inquisition. Again, another polarizing title for the most part, but I personally enjoyed it quite a bit, though when it comes to unique things that it does really well, I think the Judgement system is probably my favorite. You see, after you defeat an enemy or conquer a territory in Inquisition, often their leader will be hauled back to your keep, where you then get a side quest to pass judgment on them, which can be just as simple as killing them or imprisoning them, or under certain situations with certain triggers you might be able to get a special effect out of them in a way that forces them to help the Inquisition or leads to further more obscure benefits. But ultimately, in your role as the Inquisitor, getting the chance to sort of formally decide the fate of the people who have caused you so much trouble, outside of just killing them in a fight, was really, really rewarding. And while the concept itself might not necessarily be that unique, as you often have choices like that in various RPGs at the end of a boss fight, I think the way in which it was done here and all of the options available to you were really unique, and I enjoyed it a great deal. But that brings us to our final entry, and this is none other than the Mythic Path system from Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous, which sees our already rather significant hero taking on mythic power to help fight the demon invasion that is the World Wound. In fact, I imagine it's not just me that enjoys this, as probably the #1 requested feature for that game is adding in more mythic paths, though given how far-reaching they are, I imagine that's pretty hard to do. But available maybe a fourth of the way through the game or so, you can pick your initial mythic path, which it can then morph into other paths later, but each one of these sort of core paths can lead to unique quests, unique options, unique situations, dialogue, not to mention your very own unique powers that go along with each path, some of which are incredibly well fleshed out. For instance, Azada gets an entire new companion even. Lich gets undead minions and can eventually turn into a full-fledged Lich. But before you even get to that stage, you have to figure out how to unlock all of these, which is a journey in and of itself. But mythic power represents the opportunity to turn into something more grandiose than a mere mortal. But assuming you aren't happy with that initial pick, there are even alternatives that crop up later in the game, and all of that together, combined with the pretty drastic ways these can alter both interactions and story, as well as individual quests, is to say nothing even of all the different ways they can alter and add variety to the mini classes of Pathfinder 1E as well. And taken all together, it creates an incredibly deep system of character customization that a good bit of this channel was built on. In fact, I think they did such a good job with it that following that system up, I think will be a bit of a challenge in terms of player perception for the developer's next game, Rogue Trader. But it's a great system, which is why I couldn't stop covering it personally, which led to much of this channel's success. That, though, I think is where we will leave this particular video off. I certainly hope you enjoyed it, though by all means, I'm sure you are itching to tell me all about your favorite game mechanics down in the comment section below, which I naturally encourage you to do while liking and subscribing while you're at it. However, regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.